So there's a weird intersection between financial services and the financial services products that exist out there. We're at the Finance Magnus Africa Summit, of course, and we're reflecting on some of the conversations that are happening here, some of the speakers that are here, as well as, I suppose, some of the products that are on offer. I think the traditional idea or the traditional misconception around the online trading or the investing space is that there's only certain products that are out there and the other products don't make sense or they don't matter. So I thought we'd dispel those rumors and those myths and we'd get in someone special. You may remember that on the podcast in the past, we have had a gentleman by the name of Elke Brink from PSG. This time around, we've got another Brink. And yes, there is a relation. This is Nelis's sister, Elke Brink. We've known each other even before I've known Nelis. And she's also in the wealth management space, also at PSG. And she's here to partly speak at Finance Magnus, but also share a bit about how her world interconnects with this world that we know as the world of online trading. Elke, thanks so much for joining me. Thanks for taking the time. I know it's busy to juggle through all of these things, but it's always lovely to catch up. And I know you and I have done this before. I think when I first referred your name to the Finance Magnus guys was about 2 years ago now.
Yeah,
so
it was 2 years ago in
Johannesburg. We've done this before. We know
Yes.
kind of what to do here, but I think many people don't understand the relationship between a wealth manager, the long-term wealth conversation, and how that relates to the hustle and bustle of the
trading
world that we see.
Yeah.
How do you kind of see the two worlds separately, but how do you also see them coming together?
Thanks, Jimmy, and it's lovely to be here. It's nice to see you on this side of the world in the Western Cape. It's definitely, I think the whole world around investment space, and I think when we're even looking at the bigger tech world and artificial intelligence and everything stepping in, it's becoming a very interesting space to navigate. From the advisory side, we definitely approach everything with a more conservative mindset in many cases. And the main reason for that is eventually it's my job to protect the client and to put the client in the best possible position. Of course, to create wealth, we want to ensure wealth creation and tax efficiency and proper wealth planning for a future. Should it be a younger individual starting off only building a portfolio, or should it be a pensioner who has worked a lifetime and you're retiring and now we need to sustain that income for another 30 or 40 years? So there's a very specific goal in mind, but I think what we invest in, yes, is definitely not always going to look the same. I think if we even just look at the stock market, so many companies we're investing in today didn't exist 30, 40 years back. So in terms of change, I think it's important to be able to adapt with the world. I think there's a incredibly powerful online world, and I think trading in itself is a extremely fun, extremely stimulating environment. But I think there's just I almost want to say urgency on the individual to protect yourself also. And I think so much more so when we're moving into an AI type of space, the opportunities are much greater, but also the threats. And I think in terms of really knowing what you're doing, and I think that's where the advisory side of it fits in. I think sometimes just ensuring that you make the right decisions from the start. Sometimes it's not the easiest of things to sell something later or to correct the structure later on if you invested in the wrong thing or something that was not well researched or didn't really align with your goals. So I think that's the one point of advice I would just give the average investor when you're navigating the online trading world is make sure you know what you're doing.
Also, I think the side of what you do, the discretionary side, the managed investment side, there is space and there is room for the self-managed, which is what the online trading is by and large. I mean, a lot of the online platforms are execution only. You have to make the decisions, which therefore then means that is a self-managed investment. And I know there's a place for self-managed, but there's also a place for managed and discretionary funds, because as you said, your job then becomes as a principle to act in the best interest of your client. And so therefore, managed and self-managed can come together and coexist, but it's also not about alienating one or the other. It's not about saying everything must be self-managed when there is the discretionary world. And in the discretionary world as well, it's also saying we'll manage 80 or 90% of the discretionary stuff.
Yes.
Here's 10% of the self-managed, so that you can also kind of get the knowledge and the experience.
Absolutely, and I think there's definitely a place to coexist. I think when it comes to proper investment planning, I think it's sometimes important to remember that there's an holistic view to it. It's not just about the investment, it's actually about the tax planning around it. Are you making tax efficient decisions as well for the long term? Are you addressing estate planning? So especially if you have a family or let's say intercontinental family. So I think that's happening more and more where you have siblings or kids living abroad. So it becomes very complicated. What happens to your wealth should you pass away or should you want to pass this on? So I think knowing that I almost want to say the advisory side of it addresses all of this, so not just the actual investment, where self-managed definitely has a place. And I think if you have a passion for it and you understand it well, why not dabble a bit?
If we look at the wealth planning conversation, I want to look at just how that shapes up when you're dealing with things like self-managed and discretionary investments and self-managed investments. When you are looking at the wealth building and the wealth side of the conversation, that's obviously a longer term conversation. That's not we've got it now. In some cases, it's an intergenerational conversation.
Definitely.
And in the intergenerational conversation, you can pass down discretionary funds and portfolios, but also self-managed portfolios as well.
Yeah, I think if you optimize the vehicles you're using, you can actually plan it very efficiently by choosing certain investment vehicles where your children or your spouse or whoever it may be can actually take over the product from you, which is actually ideal. So you want to typically plan your wealth that you don't have to sell off the investment to be able to hand it over to next generations. And let's say you have built a global portfolio as an example, you typically don't want to bring it back. So you need to make sure the planning is in place. But I think in most portfolios in today's time, I would say there's a very good combination of the two. So a very large component would be self-managed, and I think from a fee point of view, but also a understanding point of view, I think there's so much information available to the average investor today. It's not difficult doing it yourself if you like doing it. And I think these things change. I find a lot of my clients, when they move into the retired phase of life, they just don't feel like doing it anymore, even if they can. So then typically they start handing over more to the advisory side.
What is the value of the advisory side in today's world? Because of the amount of access there is, like you said, to information, to self-managed solutions, to these, I can do this myself. Where then does the advisor sit and say, this is what I can do for you that you might not find elsewhere?
I think it's a combination of, as I refer to, I think the holistic side of it. So not just actually managing the investment and choosing where to invest, but navigating the whole picture around it. So estate planning and tax efficiency and optimal products for what you're trying to achieve. Together with that, I think the independence of it in terms of course, having a whole team of analysts and different fund managers we get to work with, where if you have a different primary job in the day, I don't think you specifically have the time to sit and research every single company or make the necessary moves if needed. And I think that's the important part of, let's say, a more active approach to investing, is if a move needs to be made, it needs to be made fairly quickly. And I think that's important. So I think the advisory side also has a role in terms of, I think, humanity is just more complex than just making everything digital. I think if you have a disabled child, or you have a sick partner, or you yourself are maybe in a phase where your health is not perfect and you have different needs. So I think the specifics in terms of every person and every family's needs and every business needs, so planning for those exact needs, which I don't think is a cookie cutter principle.
I think what I've also realized as well about the advisory side of it, and about, like you said, the value of the research that comes through from there, is especially when you're dealing with wealth products, or you're dealing with a long-term strategy, or you're dealing with high net worth clients that are looking at a solution that gives them value beyond just what execution might be, is the value of being able to save that time, being able to optimize that and say, I can lean on the trust of my advisor,
yes,
and the research and the knowledge that my advisor has to be able to make the decisions on the self-managed side of things. So I can sit down with my advisor, map out everything else, but I can also go to my advisor and my wealth planner and say, I'm interested in Sasol. What are your thoughts on it? And there's a whole team, as you said, that does the research behind it, that does this. So you're also getting trusted advice and trusted opinions that you're able to use in the discretionary portfolio, but also in the non-discretionary portfolio.
Absolutely. So I think it's almost just having that opinion and really that knowledge base in terms of sometimes even just a little bit of a soundboard, even if it's on your self-managed portfolio, but just knowing what the view is on it in the market. And of course, our teams have a lot of data that I think the average investor doesn't always have access to. So I think in terms of that, you just get this a much larger scope of information, not only locally, but globally as well.
Sometimes it all comes down to just having that extra sounding board, having that extra conversation, and being able to sit there and say, you know what, thanks for reinforcing what I thought. Elke, thank you so much for taking the time. Thank you for
having
being
me
on our pod. I'm looking forward to hosting you when you're up in Johannesburg as well. Thank you for that.
Thank you. It's good to see you.